Today on this 2016 Ram 1500 Crew Cab, we're going to review and install the Curt Custom Fifth Wheel Installation Kit, part number C16444-204. Alright, this is what the rails look like when they're installed in the bed of your Dodge pickup. In this case, we installed this in a short bed pickup. Okay, with no hitch in there, you still have full access to your bed. These bed rails are going to be great for a time comes when you need to pull your fifth wheel trailer. Just work with a wide variety of fifth wheel hitches that are out there, as well as gooseneck adapters. Now this is a classic 5-bolt design. You get the 5 bolts that hold that cross rail into place. And on these rails, the weight capacity is actually limited by what your truck can actually pull. Now the kit does come with the rails you see on top of the truck, as well as the brackets that go below the truck as well. This also saves installation time because you don't have to guess where to put the brackets. The brackets will only fit in one place, so you know where they're going on the right place the first time. Next, we'll go ahead and show you how we installed everything on our Ram pickup. Okay, first part of our install is actually get the truck ready. To do that, we actually want to lift the frame of the truck up enough where the tire is loose and that it allows the suspension to hang down, so you have easy access to the frame right here. Alright, yes, I have it on a lift, but you can easily do this with some jack stands underneath the frame at the bottom of the truck. Next, we have to remove the fender liner right here because we have to have access in this area. So we'll go ahead and remove all the fasteners for the fender liner. Now to remove our fasteners, we're all going to use an 8mm socket. And we'll go ahead and work it loose and we'll go ahead and pull it out. The spare tire will have to be removed for a little while as well. Alright, next we need to get into the bed of the truck and we'll go ahead and make some marks for our cross rail that goes in the bed. Going by the measurements and the instructions, we'll go ahead and measure out from the edge of the bed, not the tailgate, all the way back as described on the instructions. Got one side done, let's go over to the other side of the truck, repeat the same process. Now, once we have a rail in place, we'll carefully mark it and drill out our holes here. We need to go 1, 2, 3 in, we'll find the center, mark it. In the center, we'll do the one for the inside here, and on the driver's side here, 1, 2, 3 in. Using a very small pilot hole, about 1/8 of an inch, we'll go ahead and drill out our pilots. With the pilot holes drilled out, we'll go ahead and move the rail out of the way and continue on underneath the truck. Next up, just the driver's side of the exhaust needs to be temporarily removed. This is only for vehicles that have dual exhaust. Using 15mm socket on this clamp right here. Okay, we'll get it nice and loose. To make things a little bit easier to remove, I sprayed some penetrant on it to help move it back a little bit. And I actually just used a plastic mallet and I just tapped it back loose. Now I'm using a special hanger tool to remove this, but you can probably do it by hand if you have it lubricated enough, or you can also use a pry bar and push it out with that too. Okay. Once you have it loose enough, it's pretty light to remove. Next up, we have to go ahead and loosen up this wire harness that goes on top of the frame rail right here. Eventually there'll be a bracket that will sit right on top of this. So I'm just using a trim panel tool. There's one right back here too. You can do this with a screwdriver too. Next up, the breather line for the rear axle. We need to unclip that. Now the clips for the line, you get access from the bottom right here. So I'm just using a small screwdriver to pop them out from the bottom. Get that out of the way for now. We do have to disconnect this electrical connector here, and there's an identical one on the passenger side that's behind the heat shield for a spare tire. So there's a little plastic lock that I'm just going to push with a screwdriver. It's red in color. Pop it loose. Press down right here, and you can go ahead and pull it apart. It will be kind of tough to pull apart, especially if it's got some dust around it. We're going to repeat this same process on the one that's on the other side that's hidden behind the heat shield. We follow the wire harness down behind the heat shield right here. Look up from the bottom where you can find a connection point. A couple more details about the wire harness is that you want to take this little clip off, peel up this little edge right here, and it comes apart like that. And then you can take the whole assembly and push it up and over the rail. Alright, let's go back to our driver's side. That hang we pulled off right here for the exhaust. This rod needs to be taken off as well for now. And the fastener's on top here. And you can use a 13mm socket or a 13mm ratchet wrench like I'm using. There's a little tab that to work loose too. This cross member right here, this faces towards the back of the truck. So I'm going to take this end, push it over the exhaust, and the other end's going to go up over the brakes a little bit. And then I'll raise the passenger side one more time, and then bring it towards the back of the truck. Now we'll get it close right here. Make sure none of our wires or lines are getting pinched. So it's good to tuck the driver's side in first. Once we get the driver's side in there, make sure our wires are free. And then on the passenger side, we'll take our wire harness that was in here. Now you push it through this large hole. Now it's good just to route it over this center beam right here. And then we'll take our crossbar and put it into place. If we have some free play in here, then we know we have it in the right spot. Now would be a good time to take a look to make sure that the bracket that we put up in here lines up with the two holes that we drilled through the bed earlier. Now at this point we can go ahead and install some hardware. We'll use the 5/8 bolts, flat washer, and a lock nut. It's going to go through this hole here and through our bracket. And we'll loosely install it. We have this installed. We'll do the same thing over on the passenger side. This will be the location for the passenger side bolt. We can go ahead and drill out our holes. We'll go up to a 17/32 hole size. After you have our holes drilled out, it's a good idea to spray some paint, kind of help protect the edges. Let's go ahead and put this spacer block right here and put our rail back into place. We want that block there so we have constant metal-to-metal contact. We'll drop in our hardware on the sides first. Let's take our hex head bolts, we'll run them through. All right, let's go ahead and install our hardware on the bottom here. Now, we're looking at the bolt here that's closest to the tailgate on the rail. This one's going to be about the easiest one for you to see, but we'll take this spacer block because that has to go in the gap to keep that metal-to-metal contact. It's not going to be a perfect fit, but we'll get in there as straight as possible. It may also help to pry it down a little bit, the sheet metal, to help get it installed as well. That's also going to be the spacer. And then we'll have this block go on the bottom of that, and then our handle nut. And then you definitely want an extra set of hands up on top to go ahead and spin the bolt to tighten it up. We're just going to snug our bolts down, just enough to take up the gap, and that's it. We'll go ahead and continue the same process on the remaining 5 bolts going through the bed. Now we got all metal-to-metal contact right here, so we don't need that extra spacer block. So we'll just put in our long block and our handle nut. And then we can go ahead and tighten it down. Once we got all our hardware loosely installed still, we'll go ahead and reconnect our electrical connections. Push them together and make sure the lock goes in and make sure we have plenty of free play. And since it is somewhat close to the exhaust, it's a good idea to double check to make sure it's far away as possible. Now for this connection on the driver's side, I actually ran it behind this hat channel right here and over the frame, and I ran this cable up and I plug it in this way. Okay, now will be a good time to go ahead and get the 5th wheel hitch you'll be using with your truck, because we'll use that to place our front rail. So let's go ahead and lift it up and put a rail into place. Now there'll still be a little bit of play in it, so it's a good idea to check for square. So I'm using this corner here and going to the opposite on the other rail. We'll do it on both sides. Now just like before, we'll go ahead and mark and drill our holes. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, find our center. 1, 2, 3, find our center. We'll do this center one right here. And these two. Got them marked. Now we can go ahead and drill out our small pilot holes. And these holes here are really close to some components underneath the bed of the truck, so we'll be careful when we drill through these guys. Now our pilot holes are drilled. We'll go ahead and remove our rail and we'll go ahead and drill out to our final hole size. Once again, we'll go ahead and cover up some of our bare metal with some paint. Now we go ahead and install some hardware and brackets for the front rail. We're looking at the passenger side here. We're going to install a carriage bolt and a short block with the square hole it fits into. We're going to install one here and here. We're going to use the provided bolt leader. I'm going to run it down through the frame and then out this oval hole here. I'm going to take my block. I'm going to run it through the bolt leader and then the inside of the frame. I'll take my bolt leader next and thread it into place. Push the bolt inside and pull it through just like that. Okay, now this one we're going to do a little bit different. We'll go ahead and put everything together on the outside here. Thread it all together. Push into the frame. Pull it back through. Next we're going to go ahead and loosen up the support rod right here. Just a 10mm socket on this bolt. Can remove it. And we're just going to just push this out of our way. Now install a bracket for the passenger side. There are two different shapes, so we'll go ahead and run it this edge over the top of the shock. Move that rod out of the way. Okay. Once we got it in there, we'll go ahead and take our pull wires, or bolt leaders, and run them through the holes in the bracket. It doesn't matter if they fall in because we can pull them back through with the bolt leaders. Okay. So now I'm going to put my bracket up into place. We'll add this rectangle with the square hole spacer block. We'll slide that on to this bolt right here. And the bolt that's lower gets a smaller rectangle with the round hole. We'll thread that through. And it'll go just like that. Now we'll thread our wires through the bracket and put a bracket into place. All right, with the weight pinching everything down, we'll go ahead and be careful and remove our wire pulls because we have to use them on the other side. Then we'll install the flange nut. It'll be a 1/2-inch flange nut. Same thing on this bolt here. Just enough to snug it up, and we can still move it. This is our bracket for the driver's side. There's this piece right here that will snap on to the bracket on the thick part here. This will help protect the lines that are right next to it from rubbing on the raw metal. Okay, there's a little wire harness right here. I want to pop it up and out of the way. Just give us some slack here. I'm just going to tuck that away for now. We can always zip tie it later. Just like on the passenger side, I got this bracket and just moved it out of the way. Same combination as before. Take my bolt leader, run it down, and we'll install our hardware. Before you put your bracket in place, sometimes you may have to remove this one as well. And our bracket will sit over the ground stud right here. There's a hole in the bracket built for that. It does take some patience to run that bracket up in there and make sure it's sitting flat. Okay. Well, the spacers give us plenty of room for our ground wires, so I don't have to worry about that. Let's make sure everything else is sitting the way we want it and it's not getting pinched. This is all loosely installed for now. Let's go ahead and put our rail back into place and we'll install our hardware. And the center bolt will get the U-shaped spacer. We'll have to maneuver the bracket on the bottom here to make sure this one goes all the way through. Now we'll go ahead and connect our hardware from our rail to our brackets. Once again, the U-shaped spacer will go between the frame bracket and the bed, and then a square block, and then our handle nut. You will definitely want an extra set of hands up on top to help spin the bolt and get it started. So one little trick we did here is that the bolt that goes to the hat channel is really hard to get to. So you still need a spacer here too, but we just taped everything together. Our U-shaped spacer, our regular flat spacer with a square hole, and then our handle nut. And it's just gonna be really just out of reach with your fingers. So to help reach it in, just use some vice grips, some needle nose, to get that extra little bit in there. All right, now the hardware is just snugged down but not tightened up. Now we'll go ahead and put our hitch back into place. We'll also install the pins too. Now we'll go ahead and tighten down the bolts. Okay, now we'll go ahead and torque down the bolts as specified in the instructions. Next we'll go ahead and move on to the brackets. We'll tighten and torque these bolts down as well. Now we'll go ahead and tighten down our hardware going from this cross member here up to that C-channel we installed earlier. And torque these bolts down as well. At this point, all our hardware is fully installed, so we can go ahead and reinstall the components we had to take off to make room for it. This breather tube right here, I actually just took these clips right here that are on there and scooted them down just a little bit, and actually clip them onto this component right here. So I'm just going to push them on. That'll hold it just fine. Next, you want to double check to make sure your wires are still safe and not smashed up or anything like that. Zip tie them as needed. Let's go ahead and put our hanger bracket back up for our exhaust. There is a cutout in the hardware here, so we just go ahead and put this end back into its hook. And then we can bolt it back into place. We go ahead and put our exhaust back up into place. All right, now our fender wells can go back into place. Don't forget to put your little support arm back into place. And that'll finish it for the Curt Custom Fifth Wheel Installation Kit, part number C16444-204 on this 2016 Ram 1500.
Click the link below to shop, learn more, or visit us at etrailer.com.